Alina Ward watched the screen for long minutes without moving. The glow of the monitors painted her face in thin bands of blue and white. Each beep from the console felt loud in the quiet room. Outside, the city lights of New Houston blinked like small stars. Inside the Deep Space Monitoring Division, the real stars seemed to be dying. She had seen strange things before. Stars that pulsed oddly. Signals that arrived with missing pieces. But this was different. The pattern in the data was not noise or a machine fault. The light from distant suns faded in a way that did not fit any known model. It was as if the stars were losing something inside, not just dimming but unraveling. Ethan Cole, the man who ran the field arrays, came in and stood by her. His shoulders were broad, his face tired from too many late shifts. He tapped on the console and brought up the same graphs Alina stared at. He did not need to ask. The curves were plain and could not be wished away. "We need to send this up the chain," he said. His voice was steady, but Alina heard worry beneath it. "They will not like it, but they must see it." Alina had already drafted 3 reports. She had checked and rechecked the code, compared readings from 3 different telescopes, and spoken to teams on Mars and in orbit around Europa. Each independent system saw the same thing. It was not a sensor error. The pattern moved through space like a cold finger, touching one star and then slipping to the next. It left behind a silence in the light. She pushed a stack of papers toward Ethan. The top page showed a timeline. The data said the anomaly would reach the outer arms within months. If the wave kept its shape and speed, whole systems could fall silent in years. The words on the page were short and hard. Alina read them aloud as if saying it gave it weight. "If this is right, then entire systems could lose their suns," she said. "Not just damage, not just failure, gone." Ethan rubbed his forehead. He had 2 children on a lunar farm and he thought of them now. "We send the report to the Galactic Council?" he asked. Alina nodded. It was their duty. The Council was the only body with the reach and tools to test what she believed was coming. She knew some on the Council already took humanity with a twist of pride and a pinch of doubt. Humans had made great leaps in the last centuries, but the galaxy had older powers and old rivalries. Some counselors liked to think humans lived close to their home and close to their limits. The next morning, Alina and Ethan rode the mag rail to the embassy tower. The sky was clear, and the sun burned steady. People on the platform moved as if nothing of the universe could change. Alina felt a strange weight on her chest, like the pressure before a storm. At the embassy, liaison officer Natalie Brooks met them. Natalie had been the contact between Earth and the Council for over a decade. She knew the careful words that mattered in a room full of strangers. She took the packet from Alina and studied it in silence. "This is serious," she said finally. "I will get a meeting, but there may be politics. Politics could kill the chance to act." Alina understood this. She thought of the old stories about leaders who had ignored small warnings and paid later in ruin. They were not stories for her. They were warnings. The report went up. The Council read the charts and saw the timelines. There were closed sessions and murmured questions. Alina watched the live feed in a small room off the main hall, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee gone cold. The counselors spoke in low tones. A few asked practical questions about instruments and energy readings. One counselor asked whether humans had any interest in exaggerating threats to gain more influence. The question was a small knife. Ethan called from the hall and told her the vote would be tomorrow. For now, the Council asked for more data and calm restraint. They wanted to send survey skiffs out to a few points and to run their own models. They thanked Earth for the report and promised to look into it. When the vote came the next day, the decision was not what Alina hoped. The Council believed the phenomenon could be a transient flare, perhaps a new type of stellar behavior not yet catalogued. A minority agreed with deeper concern and asked for a task force. The majority voted to monitor and wait. It was a slow, careful answer, the type that had helped them avoid rash wars, but not the answer Alina thought time allowed. She left the embassy feeling hollow. The sky looked the same, but inside the light seemed worse. Ethan met her at the tram with a quiet face. They both knew the Council's vote would buy time for study but not for direct action. The wave in the data did not care for votes. Back at the monitoring station, Alina did not sleep. She worked through the night, running scenarios for what might slow the pattern. The models were grim. Most told of collapse in systems far from their home in centuries, others in decades. She wrote memos to any group who might help: mining lords, old research stations, defense consortia. Some replied with concern and offered small resources. Many replied with polite doubt. It was in those replies that Alina first saw the old fear. Some leaders smiled at the idea that humans were making a mountain from a molehill. Others, she sensed through their words, feared where the truth might lead. If the wave was real, then many nations and guilds might lose holdings and power. The simple truth could be dangerous. Ethan helped organize a small team of volunteers from the station and the university. They kept their meetings quiet. They met in an old library beneath the technical center, where the air smelled of paper and glue. There, in the dim light, they planned ways to test the wave more directly. They built a portable sensor pack that could ride on cargo vessels. It was a cheap band of instruments, but it could check whether the wave's signature changed near different masses. They sent the first pack out with a freighter to a mining station near the affected arm. The freighter reported back strange results. The instruments showed the same thread of change, but near the mining station the pattern bent. It was as if the wave could be steered by mass and energy. The freighter's crew spoke in whispers about the lights in the sky changing as the signature passed. The captain refused to go back. Alina felt hope for a moment. If the wave could be altered by mass, then something could be done. If the shape could be bent, perhaps it could be broken. But she also felt fear. The freighter's report came with an addendum. The wave's speed had increased along that leg. The finger had moved faster. They sent more packs. Each one returned the same truth. The wave moved like a slow knife but kept gaining speed. The models became worse. The team worked around the clock. They mapped the path of the pattern and named the shape in simple terms so they could speak of it without panic: the entropy wave. Alina and her team wrote again to the council. This time they asked for resources to test how mass influenced the path and to place sensors at key points. They asked for permission to work with allied species who had long-range drives and different technologies. The council replied with caution. One member suggested that the pattern might be a natural rearrangement in the arm, and that outside intervention could do more harm than good. When the council refused direct action, Alina made a choice she had not expected to make. She would not stand idle while stars fell. She knew the limits of her authority, but she also knew the cost of waiting. The volunteers at the station were ready to do more. They had no fleet and no heavy weapons, but they had minds and tools. They began to build what they could with the parts they had. Engineers like Jason Miller rewired old gravitational arrays meant for asteroid lifting. Lindsay Harper reprogrammed an orbital relay once used for deep sky comms. Small teams of pilots volunteered to carry sensors into strange regions. They worked fast and quietly. Many of them did not tell family, not because they wanted lies, but because they wanted to protect their loved ones from the fear that would come with the truth. Rumors spread. Some people on the station saw teams loading strange modules into cargo bays and asked questions. The official line remained calm. The council studied. Earth sent messages and received polite replies. But beneath the polite surface, a current of urgency moved through the labs and docks. On a late afternoon, Alina stood on a balcony that looked out over the sea of antennae. The sun hung low and the long shadows of dishes and towers reached like hands. She held a small photo in her palm. It was a picture of her younger brother, a boy who loved to watch meteors. He had grown into a man who loved the quiet work of calibration. Alina's throat tightened. She thought of how fragile life felt against the scale of the sky. A siren interrupted her thought. A message had come. A small colony on a world near the Perseus arm had reported a sudden dimming. The light from its central star had changed in ways the team had not seen before. Panic spread through the control room. Screens lit up with more readings. The shape they had been tracking had moved closer. Alina called the volunteers. They did not hesitate. The team split into groups. Some worked on sending remote probes to the colony. Others prepared to intercept and record what they could. The council issued a statement that they were increasing monitoring. The words felt slow and distant. For the first time, Alina felt the taste of real fear. The wave had left a mark on a world and people that were losing their light. She watched the live feed as the colony's sky went dark in the wrong way. Not day into night, but color into gray, detail into a flatness that swallowed edges. Communications from the colony grew faint and then broken. The last voice heard was a small, short broadcast, a note of alarm and then only static. Alina stood frozen when the sound cut. She thought of all the small things that made a life and how they could vanish in an instant. The team had to act faster. They had to gather more data, build better models, and send warnings that could no longer be treated as a simple report. News of the colony's dimming reached the council by evening. There was a flurry of messages and a hastened session. This time more councilors asked for emergency measures. The vote was close. Some called for an immediate task force. Others argued for further study. The final decision was to send a small fleet to survey the site and to open resources for analysis. It was better than the earlier vote, but it came after a world had already fallen into silence. Alina watched the council feed with tears she did not try to hide. The debates had weight and value, but the world they had lost did not come back because of good words. She understood that many on the council feared rushing into a dangerous unknown. They feared the cost in lives if an intervention went wrong. She felt that fear too, but she also felt grief for those who had not been given the chance to be warned. The volunteers kept working. They helped fit probes with extra shielding and tuned sensors to record minute changes in gravitational fields. Each probe cost time and resources, and a part of the team's sleep. The freighter captains who once refused to return now offered routes if they could earn safe passage. Small communities gave up old parts and broken satellites to help build the probes. On the day the first council skiffs left the station for the dimmed colony, Alina walked to the hangar with the team. The skiffs were small and fast but carried advanced sensors. The air smelled of oil and metal, and the quiet of people ready to leave. Ethan clasped Alina's hand for a moment. He said little, but his eyes told her he would come back. She hoped he would. The skiff sped into dark space and vanished into the thin trail of stars. Alina watched until the tracking blip dropped from the screen. The waiting began. In waiting, she thought of the many things that made up a civilization: markets and songs, schoolrooms and arguments, the neat rows of houses and the messy dinners. Those things felt small and precious now. They waited for news. The first message from the council skiffs arrived 40 hours after launch. It was broken and filled with static, but the words were still clear enough to bring a cold ache into the control room. The pilots reported a field of gray light around the colony. They said the land had lost its shape. Mountains and oceans looked like faded drawings, as if the colors of the world had been washed away. The pilots tried to land, but the surface gave no clear readings. They hovered above the colony and sent scans that showed the star's light had changed in an unnatural way. Alina listened to each word with a tight chest. It felt like watching a life fade from afar. Ethan, who had volunteered to join one of the skiffs, sounded tired when he spoke in the background. The signal cut out twice before he could finish. He said the wave was stronger than expected and that the colony had no survivors. His voice cracked and then the message ended. The control room grew silent. The staff looked at one another and then back at the screens. No one wanted to speak the truth, but everyone felt it. A civilization on that world had fallen and only gray shadows remained. The council's slow decisions now felt like old mistakes. Natalie Brooks was the first to break the silence. She stood beside Alina and read through the draft reports. She was usually calm and steady, but even she looked shaken. "This will force the council to act," she said softly. "They cannot wait now. A world is gone." Alina wanted to believe that. She wanted to believe the council would move fast, gather forces, and begin true work to stop the entropy wave. But she knew how the council worked. They would discuss, debate, send more surveys, and then argue about the risk of action. They would worry about who controlled which sectors and which species might gain or lose from emergency measures. They would talk until more lives were lost. As Alina expected, the emergency session of the council lasted 2 days. The feed showed raised voices and long pauses. Some councilors demanded immediate intervention. Others argued the wave might burn out naturally. One group said humanity's warnings were valuable but incomplete. Another group questioned whether the wave was not a simple cosmic cycle. When the council finally voted, they approved only half measures. They would increase scans. They would send more skiffs. They would study the energy fields around the dimmed colony. They would plan a larger meeting in the months to come. It was not enough. Ethan returned from the mission with a pale face and heavy eyes. He had seen the colony with his own eyes. He met Alina in the quiet room and told her what he could not say in the report. The ground was gone, he said. Not destroyed, not burned. Gone in a way I cannot explain. It was like the world had lost its memory of what it once was. Trees were tall gray shapes with no bark. Buildings were like shadows of themselves. Even sound felt thin. We did not land because we feared the ship might lose its shape too. Alina felt tears she did not want. She kept her composure, but the grief was sharp. Ethan leaned back in his chair. The wave is real, he said. It is stronger than the models, stronger than we thought. We must do more than warn the council. Alina agreed. She felt the truth of his words settle into her bones. Waiting would only bring more collapse. In the days that followed, news of the dimmed colony spread across the galaxy. Traders whispered about it in markets. Pilots discussed it in deep space relay stations. Miners talked about it as they carved out tunnels in far moons. Some feared the story was exaggerated. Others feared it was only the beginning. The silence from the colony became a dark reminder of what the wave could bring. As fear grew, some species began to build small defenses. They created shields to protect their stars. They formed research groups to study the wave, but their tools were limited. They had never seen a cosmic threat like this. On Earth, Alina and her volunteer team continued their work in secret corners of the Deep Space Monitoring Division. They had only basic tools, recycled machines, and old models, but they had determination. They knew the truth demanded action, not waiting. They added new sensors to cargo shuttles. They upgraded old gravitational modules once used to lift heavy ore. They tuned communication lines to catch even small changes in distant stars. They worked with pilots who were brave enough to travel to the edge of the wave. A few independent research stations sent data that matched Alina's predictions. On some worlds, the night sky had begun to flicker. People reported strange distortions at dawn. On one moon, the shadows of rocks shifted in ways that did not match the light source. The wave was touching more places. One evening, Alina sat with Jason Miller, Lindsay Harper, and the rest of the team. The room was dim, lit only by screens. Jason leaned forward and pointed at the map they had created. "Look here," he said. "The wave is not uniform. It bends in certain areas. When it passes near large masses, it curves. That means we might be able to drive it away or slow it down if we can build something strong enough." Lindsay frowned. She tapped the screen. "But the energy needed to bend it would be huge. We do not have machines strong enough. Not even the council does." Alina listened carefully. The truth was hard, but she did not give up. "What if," she said slowly, "humanity once had something stronger? What if the old records were right?" The room fell silent. They all knew the stories. Ancient Earth legends spoke of old devices left behind by an earlier human civilization. Some believed those old humans had built powerful machines that could shape gravity and energy. Most people thought it was myth, but Alina had seen enough strange things to consider the possibility. "There were old stabilizers," Jason said at last. "Machines buried under the moon and Mars. Most say they are empty shells now." "What if they are not empty?" Alina asked. "What if they are sleeping?" It was a bold thought, but bold thoughts were what they needed. The team agreed to investigate the old sites. They used research passes and old access codes. They traveled in small groups. The moon base was the first stop. Under layers of rock and forgotten tunnels, they found the old stabilizer chamber. The chamber was a wide hall with metal walls that hummed faintly. The stabilizer itself was a large circular machine with rings that floated without touching the ground. Dust coated the floor, but the machine did not look broken. It looked patient. Jason ran tests on its surface. Lindsay tried to decode the symbols carved into the inner ring. Alina walked around the stabilizer slowly, feeling a quiet weight in the air. "This is not dead," Jason whispered. "It is only idle." Alina felt a spark of hope. Back on Earth, the Council made another announcement. They would send a larger fleet to study the wave. They would share information across the galaxy. But they still warned against strong interventions. They feared causing more damage. The announcement frustrated many. Some worlds wanted swift action to stop the wave. Others felt the Council was hiding something. Protests broke out on a few planets. Some people demanded to know what the Council feared. Others wanted humans to speak more openly. Natalie Brooks met with Alina and Ethan one night after the announcement. She looked tired. Her voice held the strain of days filled with diplomacy. "The Council does not trust itself," she said. "They see danger in every option. They fear making the wrong choice." But doing nothing is also a choice. Alina agreed. Doing nothing meant more worlds would dim and fall. Over the next weeks, more sensors returned data. The wave accelerated. Stars flickered faster. Even the Council could not deny the threat anymore. They called for a grand meeting with every allied species. Delegates came from across the galaxy. The meeting took place on a large station near neutral space. Alina watched the meeting through live feeds. She listened to the speeches and arguments. One delegate said the wave was a natural event that should be observed carefully. Another said drastic action was needed. A third claimed only humans had seen the true pattern. A fourth accused humans of hiding technology. The meeting lasted days. There were no clear answers. During these long sessions, Alina and her team activated part of the old stabilizer deep under the moon. The rings began to spin slowly. They generated a soft pulse that filled the chamber with low vibrations. The team felt nervous but excited. Jason checked the readings and grinned. "It works," he whispered. "At least part of it does." Lindsay studied the waveforms. "If we activate it fully," she said, "we might be able to bend the wave, but it would take huge energy and it could shake the moon." Alina felt the weight of the decision. The stabilizer might save the galaxy, but it could also cause unknown harm. Meanwhile, the galaxy grew restless. The wave touched another world. This world was larger and more advanced than the dimmed colony. Its people sent desperate messages as their sky changed. The Council fleet monitored from afar. They said the risk of landing was too high. The world faded anyway. People across the galaxy felt fear. They watched their leaders argue. They watched the wave move closer. They watched the stars blink. Ethan met with Alina one night on the rooftop of the monitoring division. The stars above looked peaceful, hiding their silent danger. "We cannot wait for the Council," he said. "Not anymore. We have seen too much. We must act." Alina nodded. "We will need more stabilizers. The one on the moon is not enough." "The old records speak of another beneath Mars," Ethan said. "We should check it." They left Earth in a small shuttle with Jason, Lindsay, and a few others. The trip to Mars was quiet. Each person carried the same mix of fear and resolve. The stabilizer on Mars was buried deeper than the lunar one. It took a full day to reach the chamber. This stabilizer was larger, built into the bedrock of an old canyon. Its rings had carvings that glowed faintly when touched. It hummed when the team powered the nearby systems. "This one is stronger," Lindsay said. "Much stronger." Alina felt the ground vibrate under her feet. They tested it carefully. The readings were stronger than they hoped. The machine was ancient but not weak. If both stabilizers worked together, they might create a field strong enough to bend the entropy wave. But again, there was the same danger. The energy needed to activate both fully could rattle the moon and Mars. It could alter orbits. It could cause quakes. Alina stood in the chamber and made herself breathe slowly. Saving the galaxy might cost them much. Doing nothing would cost far more. Back on Earth, news of the second dimmed world reached the public. Fear grew sharper. The Council called emergency meetings but made no clear decisions. Some species began to prepare evacuation plans for threatened sectors. Natalie Brooks spoke to Alina through a secure channel. "The Council is losing trust," she said. "They hear the fear of the people, but they still fear acting without perfect knowledge. They know you are working on something. They want details." Alina answered calmly. "We will share results soon, but we are still testing, and we need more time." "Time is what we are losing," Natalie warned. As the wave approached new systems, the galaxy watched the skies with dread. Alina and her team prepared their largest test yet. They would activate both stabilizers at partial power and see how the wave reacted. The night before the test, Alina could not sleep. She walked through the corridors of the station and thought of the colony that had dimmed, the people who had vanished, and the worlds that might still be saved. She knew the test could fail. She knew the machines could shake the moon or Mars. She knew the Council might forbid further action. But she also knew the galaxy faced collapse. In the morning, the team prepared the stabilizers. Screens flickered with power readings. The rings began to glow. Energy built slowly in the chambers. Alina stood at the center console. Her voice was steady. "Begin the test." The machines awoke. The stabilizers came alive with a deep sound that seemed to move through the walls and into the bones of everyone in the chamber. Alina watched the readings rise. Light formed thin rings around the ancient devices. Dust lifted gently from the floor as if gravity itself was shifting. Even the air seemed to hum. Jason Miller stood at one of the control panels, typing fast. Lindsay Harper monitored the wave readings from orbit. Ethan Cole stayed close to Alina, ready to help her manage the links between the lunar and Martian systems. The first part of the test was simple. They wanted to see if the stabilizers could speak to each other across the distance. The ancient machines had once been part of a larger network, but that network had been gone for centuries. At first, nothing happened. The rings spun slowly, glowing brighter, but no signal passed between the moon and Mars. Jason frowned. "We might need to increase power by a small amount." His hand hovered over the controls. Alina hesitated. Even a small increase could have side effects, but they had no choice. "Do it," she said. Jason raised the power. The lights in the chamber flickered and the stabilizer vibrated harder. A thin beam of soft light shot upward from the center of the machine. Lindsay shouted through the comm from the orbital station. It worked. The signal reached Mars. For a moment, relief washed through the room. The two ancient machines were alive and listening. But then a strange sound echoed through the chamber. The stabilizer on the moon shook slightly. A ripple in the air spread outward, making the lights blur for a moment. "We need to lower power," Jason warned. Ethan checked the readings, his face tensed. "Not yet, look at this." The monitors showed a new change in the entropy wave. It wavered just slightly, as if something had brushed against it from afar. "That is because of us," Alina whispered. They had touched the wave. Hope filled the room. Even a small effect meant the stabilizers were working. They could influence the wave. They could shape it. They could stop collapse, but the hope lasted only seconds. The monitors beeped rapidly. The wave shifted again, faster this time. It twisted like something waking from sleep. Lindsay's voice came through the comm, carried by fear. "The wave is reacting. It is speeding up. We must end the test now." Alina felt her pulse rise. "Shut it down." Jason moved quickly. The glow faded from the stabilizer. The deep hum softened. The dust fell back to the floor. The test ended. For a moment, no one spoke. They all stared at the readings. The wave had changed direction. It was no longer moving slow and steady. It was shifting toward another system, one close to a major trade route. The space between systems began to distort. Lindsay spoke again. "The test did not hurt the stabilizers, but it woke the wave. It knows something touched it." Alina closed her eyes. It did not surprise her. The wave behaved like something alive, though it was not alive in the way people understood life. They left the chamber with heavy steps. Outside the base, the sky looked the same, calm and clear. But Alina felt the weight of what they had done. They had proven the stabilizers could work, but they had also drawn the wave's attention. Back on Earth, the team gathered in the main control room. The screens were filled with new data. The wave was moving faster than ever. Ethan pointed to the map. "If it keeps this speed, it will hit the next sector in weeks, not months." Natalie Brooks arrived soon after. She had been in constant communication with the council. She looked tired more than before. "I spoke to the council chair," she said. "They know your test changed things. Some of them believe your stabilizers could save the galaxy. Others think you provoke danger." Alina sighed. "We cannot wait for them to decide again." Natalie nodded. "Then tell me what you need. I will try to help." The team worked for hours. They planned how to activate both stabilizers at higher power. They wanted a test that did more than touch the wave. They wanted to bend it, slow it, maybe even hold it in place. But there were risks. The machines could shake the moon and Mars. The energy release could damage their own worlds. Jason looked at the maps and shook his head. If we activate them fully, Earth might feel the pull. Gravity could shift slightly, not enough to harm people but enough to cause storms. Alina accepted the risk. If we do nothing, there will be storms far worse than anything Earth sees. Lindsay added, and if the stabilizers fail, we lose everything. They were quiet for a moment, then Ethan stepped forward. No matter the danger, we have to try. As the team prepared for the next test, the galaxy continued to watch the wave collapse more worlds. Reports came in from distant colonies. Stars dimmed suddenly. Planets lost their shape. Some stations vanished without a signal. The fear across the galaxy turned into anger. People blamed the Council. Some blamed science. Some blamed humans for announcing the threat. Protests erupted on a few worlds. Some groups demanded the Council step down. Others demanded humanity share every detail of the stabilizers. Natalie received messages from many sides, asking what humanity planned to do. Alina told her to wait. She would speak when the next test was done. The new test would be much more powerful. They needed to align both stabilizers precisely. They needed satellites placed in key points between Earth, the Moon, and Mars. They needed stable energy channels. Volunteers from many worlds offered help. Pilots from stations Alina had never visited sent messages saying they would fly relay nodes. Engineers from a distant moon sent old blueprints that might help stabilize power flow. Humanity had few allies in positions of power, but among ordinary people, support grew. The day before the test, Ethan visited Alina in the quiet observatory. The sky was dark, filled with stars that still shone with natural light. "Do you think we can do it?" he asked. Alina did not answer at once. She looked at the stars. "I think we are the only ones who can," Ethan nodded. "I will be on the relay craft. We must be ready." She felt fear rise but pushed it down. "Come back safely." He smiled, tired but warm. "I plan to." The next morning was calm. The sun rose slowly. People across Earth and its colonies watched the news. They knew something important was happening, even though they did not know the details. Alina stood at the center of the control room. Screens glowed around her. Teams in orbit and on Mars waited for her signal. The stabilizers hummed again. Dust rose. The air vibrated. "Activate the first ring," Alina said. Jason pressed the command. The lunar stabilizer lit up. Rings rotated smoothly. "Activate the second ring." On Mars, Lindsay gave the order. The second stabilizer glowed bright orange. The wave readings changed instantly. The wave twisted again. It felt the machines turning toward it. Ethan spoke from the relay craft. "Channels stable, we can proceed." Alina took a deep breath. "Activate full power." The chamber shook. Lights flickered. Energy pulsed across the systems. A shock wave bent space for a moment. Even Earth felt a tremor. The stabilizers roared, no longer quiet old machines but titans waking from deep rest. The wave hit the field they produced. It slowed. The room erupted in gasps. Jason stared at the readings. "It is working, we are holding it." Lindsay shouted, "Look at the distortion, we have stopped it for now." Alina stared at the monitors. The wave, which had rushed forward like a storm, was now bent and slowed. It pushed hard against the stabilizers but did not break through. Hope filled the room. They had done the impossible, but hope lasted only moments. The stabilizers began to shake violently. The energy strain was too strong. Jason yelled, "The rings cannot hold this level, they will break." Ethan shouted through the comm, "The relay nodes are overheating, we must shut down or they will explode." Alina looked at the wave, it was still slowed. If they stopped now, it would race forward again. She felt her heart race. "Hold a little longer, just a little." The machines shook harder. A loud crack echoed from the lunar chamber. Lindsay screamed. "The Martian stabilizer ring is fracturing." Alina knew she was out of time. "Shut it down." Jason hit the command. The glow faded. The hum stopped. Dust fell. The stabilizers powered down. The wave hesitated and then began moving forward again, not as fast as before, but still strong. Ethan's voice came through, softer now. "We slowed it, but we cannot hold it for long." Alina leaned on the console, exhausted. They had proven they could stop the wave, but they could not hold it without breaking the machines. Natalie arrived minutes later. She looked at the readings with wide eyes. "You did what the Council could not," she said. "You slowed the wave, even if only for a moment. This changes everything." Alina nodded. But we need a bigger plan. The stabilizers are strong but not enough. Natalie's voice was soft. Then we must convince the galaxy to help you. The council called another emergency meeting when they saw the data. This time there was no arguing about whether the threat was real. They had seen the wave slow. They knew humanity had done something no one else could, but they also knew the stabilizers could break. They feared the energy needed. Some feared that using the machines could tear space itself. When Alina stood before the council through a secure channel, she spoke simply. We slowed the wave. We can stop it, but we need your help. We need energy sources, metals, ships, and cooperation. If we do not unite, the wave will erase us one by one. Her voice held no anger, only truth. Some counselors listened. Some looked doubtful, but one thing was clear. The galaxy could not ignore humanity anymore, and the silent collapse was moving closer. The council chamber was filled with voices when Alina's message ended. Delegates spoke over one another. Some demanded that the galaxy unite. Some argued they should build their own machines. Others blamed the council for waiting too long. The wave slowing for even a moment had shaken their assumptions. Proved the disaster could be stopped, but it also proved it was closer than they feared. Alina watched the scene from the control room on Earth. She knew fear drove the council now. Fear could make people act, but it could also make them fight among themselves. She hoped they chose the path of action. Natalie Brooks contacted her soon after. Her face appeared on the screen, tired but hopeful. They will send resources, Natalie said. Not enough, but more than before. They want to help build a stronger network. Alina nodded. It is a start. We need more stabilizers. The lunar and Martian ones cannot handle full power. Natalie hesitated. There are rumors of a third stabilizer. It was only mentioned in old records. It may be hidden deep in Earth itself. Alina felt a chill. The old legends spoke of 3 great machines built by ancient humans. 2 were known, the lunar and Martian stabilizers. The third had always been a mystery. Do you know where? Alina asked. Natalie shook her head. Only that it may be beneath the oldest layers of Earth, in a place no one has reached. It was a difficult lead, but it was all they had. The next days were filled with movement. Council ships began arriving with supplies. Engineers from different species came to help. Some brought strange tools. Others brought knowledge of energy fields and gravity that humans had never seen. For the first time, the galaxy was working together. But the wave was still moving. Ethan Cole returned to Earth with his relay team. He had barely slept since the last test and carried the weight of what he had seen in deep space. We cannot wait long, he told Alina. Even with help, the wave is stronger every day. Alina agreed. She gathered the team. Jason Miller studied the old archives for clues about the third stabilizer. Lindsay Harper coordinated engineers from 3 worlds to repair the stabilizers they had used. Ethan led a group of pilots who tested new relay node designs. But the most difficult task was finding the third stabilizer. According to ancient maps, the machine was hidden deep underground, below layers of stone and forgotten structures. It had been buried long before modern humanity began keeping records. Alina and a small team used deep scanners to search the planet's crust. They traveled to old caves, dry oceans, and frozen mountains. Days passed with no clear sign. Then, on the 7th day, a scanner in a desert region picked up a strange field. It pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. Alina stared at the reading. That must be it. Ethan stood beside her. How deep is it? Too deep for old machines, she answered. But with the tools we have from the council, we can reach it. They set up a large drilling platform. Engineers from other worlds helped build a tunnel with a strange, glowing device that cut through rock like soft clay. The process took 3 days. On the 4th day, they broke through into a wide cavern. The cavern was silent. It was dark, but not fully dark. Soft blue light glowed from the walls. In the center stood a massive machine. It was round like the others, but larger. Its rings were thicker. Its base was shaped like a root that reached deep into the ground. Unlike the other stabilizers, this one still had active patterns moving across its surface. Jason whispered, "It is awake." Alina stepped forward and placed her hand on the outer shell. A soft vibration passed through her fingers. She felt warmth, as if the machine had been waiting for someone. "This is the heart stabilizer," she said. "It has more power than the others." They connected sensors. The reading surprised them. The machine could output far more energy than the lunar and Martian stabilizers combined, but activating it fully could shake the entire crust of the planet. Lindsay frowned. If we use full power, we risk earthquakes all over Earth. Alina did not blink. If we do nothing, Earth and every other world will fade into gray. The team prepared the machine carefully. They spent 3 days installing new regulators and linking it to the network that joined the lunar and Martian stabilizers. Engineers from other species helped strengthen the energy lines. Pilots placed relay nodes between planets. Ethan coordinated everything. His voice filled the comm system day and night. "We must be ready before the wave reaches the inner systems," he said. And the wave was coming. Reports from distant stations grew worse. More worlds dimmed. Stars flickered unnaturally. Some ships vanished when they crossed the wave's boundary. The collapse spread in every direction. Fear grew across the galaxy. The Council made a final request to Alina's team. "You are our last hope," the message said. "If you cannot stop the wave, no one can." The weight of those words settled on every heart. The night before the final activation, Alina walked alone outside the facility. The sky was clear. Stars shone brightly, unaware of the collapse moving through the galaxy. Ethan joined her quietly. "Do you regret starting this?" he asked. She shook her head. "If we had not warned them, if we had not tried, the wave would still be coming, but now we have a chance." He nodded. "I will be in orbit with the relay craft. If anything happens, I will warn you." Alina looked up at him. "Be careful." "I will." In the morning, everything was ready. The lunar stabilizer hummed. Martian stabilizer glowed. The heart stabilizer beneath Earth pulsed with a deep, steady rhythm. Teams across the solar system waited for Alina's signal. She stood at the command center. Her hands shook slightly. She placed them on the controls. "Begin activation," she said. The 3 stabilizers woke as one. The ground trembled. The air vibrated. Light shot into the sky from the Earth's surface. On the moon, dust rose high. On Mars, the ground cracked slightly as energy surged through the ancient machine. Alina watched the readings rise. "Open the field," she said. The stabilizers created a massive gravity shield. It spread outward like invisible water. It reached the relay nodes, then traveled further. It stretched across empty space, forming a wide barrier. The wave approached. Ethan's voice came through, breathless. "It is hitting the field now." The wave pressed against the shield. The shield bent but did not break. The wave twisted like a storm fighting against a mountain. Jason stared at the readings. "We are holding it. The field is strong." Lindsay cried out, "Look at the wave. It is slowing more than before." Alina felt hope rise, but the stabilizers were shaking hard. The ground split in several places. Earth felt the strain. The moon shook. Mars trembled. "Hold steady," Alina said. The wave pushed harder. The shield bent. The machines glowed dangerously. Ethan shouted, "Power levels are reaching the limit. If they go higher, the machines will tear apart." Alina clenched her fists. "Increase flow to the heart stabilizer." Jason hesitated. "If we do that, Earth might crack." Alina looked at him. "If we do not, the galaxy will die." Jason increased the power. The heart stabilizer roared. Its rings spun wildly. The blue light turned white. The shield strengthened. The wave slowed further. The readings changed suddenly. Lindsay gasped. "The wave is breaking apart." Alina leaned forward. "Say that again." "The wave is breaking apart," Lindsay repeated. "We are cutting it. Stabilizers are slicing through it." The control room erupted in shouts of joy. Ethan confirmed it. "The wave is collapsing. Sections are peeling away." Alina watched the screen as the massive cosmic storm began to tear into smaller pieces. The pieces dissolved slowly, losing strength. The machine strained. Earth's crust shook violently. People across the world felt the tremors. Buildings swayed. Alarms sounded, but the stabilizers held. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, the wave broke fully. The collapse ended. Green showed a clear path where the wave had once moved. The gray distortion faded. Stars beyond it shone normally again. The wave was gone. The galaxy was safe. Relief swept through the control room. People shouted, cried, hugged. Ethan's voice came through with a laugh of disbelief. "We did it," he said. "Alina, we did it." She sat down slowly, filled with exhaustion and joy. "Yes," she whispered. "We did." News spread across the galaxy. People on distant worlds cheered. The Council sent a message of thanks. They admitted they had ignored the warnings. They vowed never to do so again. Alina and her team were called the Guardians of the Galaxy's Light, but Alina only thought of the worlds they had lost. She remembered the gray colony and the second world that dimmed. She wished they could have been saved. Later, as the stabilizers cooled and the planet calmed, Ethan visited her. "You saved billions," he said. She shook her head softly. "We saved each other," he smiled. "The galaxy will never ignore us again." Alina looked toward the sky. Stars shone bright and calm. Humanity had warned the galaxy. Humanity had fought the wave. Humanity had become the guardian it was meant to be. And now the galaxy understood why ignoring the warnings had almost cost them everything.